you're no longer with Biggerpockets.
Not officially. I'm no longer the host of the Biggerpockets podcast.
What happened?
Got fired. It's been 2 years of hell.
Yeah, I want to ask you some personal questions about Biggerpockets, so it might get a little intense.
All right, let's get intense.
So, welcome to the Wealthy Investor Podcast, the #1 podcast in the world for real estate flippers and wholesalers. Did you know that, David Greene?
I'm glad that you added that caveat. Very nicely done.
Yeah, I'm not going to say...
There's a curveball. Like, it comes in at your head, and
yeah.
then it comes in as a strike. You're like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I would say it's the #1 podcast. If you Google real estate show Brian Davila,
okay,
we are the first thing that comes up, actually. So
I would buy that,
really
too.
Proud
Congratulations on that.
Thank
you own your name.
Yeah,
That's an
exactly.
important thing to do.
Well, yeah. Thank you. So, anyways, today on the podcast, we have one of the best real estate investors in the country, someone that built the biggest real estate podcast ever and now just started his own podcast, David Greene. How's it going, baby?
It's good, Brian. How are you today?
I'm excited. I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, I wore a shirt with buttons and a collar just for you.
Exactly.
Haven't put one of these on since like 2017.
Do you have court or what are you doing?
No, I just realized like I have to grow up now.
Oh.
I got my own real estate show. I need to start dressing like a grown man.
There you go. All right, so let's get straight to it. So you just started your own show, right, called The David Greene Show?
I would have started it years ago. I couldn't come up with a name. It took me a little bit.
Okay. And you're no longer with Biggerpockets.
Not officially. I'm no longer the host of the Biggerpockets podcast.
Okay, so I'm sure people are going to hear this and wonder what happened.
I got fired.
You got fired?
I guess that's the way to put it.
On your day off?
Was it my day off? No, see, they took like 6 months of not really putting Rob and I on the show much at all. And we didn't know what was going on. They didn't really tell us. I don't know if that was intentional or they didn't share everything that was going on in their mind.
Yeah.
But we did get told that they had a different vision, that they were going to put in a different host, and that we would be offered the opportunity to come back occasionally as a co-host. And so that host ended up being Dave Meyer, who I think is a good dude. No shade at Dave at all. He and I actually recorded several times together on like the Bigger News segment. That was one of the ideas I had for shows that we should do. And I thought he and I had really good chemistry. And so now he's doing the On the Market podcast and the Biggerpockets podcast. And we'll see if they ask Rob and I to come back on.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk about it. So quick fact, the two biggest things that most guests have on this podcast is #1, they started with Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like I hear that 8 out of 10 times. The second biggest thing is they got fired from a job. So I don't know why, but I feel like entrepreneurs sometimes like for some reason doesn't work out.
I will say there is a big shift. I don't want to say a mindset shift. It's more of an emotional set shift. Like what's the equivalent of emotions when it comes to mindset? We need to come up with a word for that. But I have different ideas and different thoughts now that I have a podcast.
100%.
When I was working for somebody else, because a lot of people thought that I was Biggerpockets, or that it was my company.
I thought you owned, honestly, I thought you and Brandon owned at least a part of Biggerpockets.
You would think so, right? Never was the case at all. But when Brandon and I made the show, we had complete creative control over what was talked about and how it was said.
Oh, that's good.
As Biggerpockets evolved when they were bought by private equity, they brought in producers to make more podcasts. They didn't just want our podcast. They wanted a whole host of podcasts.
Yeah.
Those producers slowly took more and more control of the show over, right? And so it just became, if I wanted to talk about something or I wanted a direction for a show, that wasn't going to happen. It was going to be, if I sold the producers on it, it could happen, but they might have a different direction. So I never owned it. And then as the years went by, I had less and less influence of it. The problem for me was because my brand and Biggerpockets were basically the same thing, all of the shows that were made were sort of projected onto this as David. So I've listened to a lot of the comments that people have made about the Biggerpockets podcast since my departure. And a lot of people have said, I stopped listening because it became too sensationalized. I stopped asking because it was like 21-year-old with 17 million units and in first 6 months of investing. And people's assumption was that I was the one who had that idea to make that content. But that's not the case. When you're hosting the podcast, the producers come up with a show, they find a guest, they bring you in, and then you interview that person and you ask questions about how it's done, but how it's marketed, how it's branded, what thumbnails are used, the title that they're using, the order of what shows are out. The host doesn't really have anything to do with it. And I only say this because I know it can be confusing for someone like you said. You thought that I owned part of the company or that Brandon did. that wasn't the case. So now that I have my own show, I have to think about, who do I want to bring on? What stories do I want to be told?
Yep.
What does the background look of the podcasts that are working really well? You didn't really have to think about that when you work for someone else because they take care of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to ask you some personal questions about Biggerpockets, so it might get a little intense.
All right,
Okay,
let's get intense.
So, do you have any regrets with putting all your eggs in that basket with Biggerpockets?
Here's the challenging thing. When you work for someone else, you're representing their brand. Mm-hmm. I'm a Christian, and a lot of people say they're a Christian. I think one of the things when someone tells you that they are is you need to dig deep and say, well, what does that mean to you?
Are you a true Christian?
And how do you define what a true Christian is?
Well, the way I define it is you put your salvation in Jesus Christ. You believe that he died on the cross and rose in 3 days.
Okay.
And then you actually are in the process of sanctification. So you're trying to become more like Christ. You're not like, oh, I'm Christian, but I drink and I smoke and I have a girlfriend that we live together and we have sex and blah, 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 blah. To me, that's not a true Christian.
That process of sanctification, I think a lot of people would leave off of their definition of Christian, and I think they're wrong for doing that.
Yeah.
But when someone says, I am a Christian, they may be leaving off the sanctification part. What a lot of people mean is, if I was given a test of what's the right answer to get into heaven, I would say the first half of your thing.
Yeah.
I believe in Jesus. I believe he died on a cross. I believe he was raised in 3 days, et cetera, et cetera. But what that means to believe in him, if that's all that means to you, you're not really any different than a demon. Because a demon would say the same thing.
Ooh.
Like, they believe Jesus was the Son of God.
Yeah.
They know. They believe he died on a cross. They believe he did it for our salvation.
Yeah.
They believe he rose 3 days later.
Yeah.
They could pass that same test, but we know that salvation's not offered to demons, right?
Yeah.
And James talks about that in his book, that demons believe the same thing as we do, but they shudder in fear of it, right? So the point is, it is important to get the definition of what it means to the individual when they say they are a Christian, rather than just saying, oh, you're a Christian, right? Yeah. Well, when it comes to my walk with God, a big piece of it is that Jesus taught you need to treat others the way you want to be treated. That's the golden rule.
Yeah.
Okay. When it comes to my relationship with Biggerpockets, I would be very upset if one of my employees came to the David Greene team, built up a big name for themselves being associated with me, built a big book of business based off of the recommendations that I made, the connections that I made. And there actually was a person that recently did this in the one brokerage that's like, it hurt a lot that they did it. Built up a very big business for themselves based off of my support. And then when they got there, tried to hold me hostage with that and say, now I need you to give me A, B, and C or else I'm going to leave. Mm-hmm. They only got there because I helped build that person up. I only helped build them up because we were on the same team.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you get betrayed. Maybe like, didn't Mariah Carey marry that guy, like the CEO of Sony, and built up her brand? And then she's like, yeah, like now that I'm famous, I don't need you anymore. I'm going to leave and I'm going to marry someone else. Like that hurts when you get used that way. It was very important to me that I did not do that to Biggerpockets.
Interesting.
So they're going to elevate you because their reach is so big and they have a lot of credibility. It would be a messed up thing for me to let them build up my brand and then go hold them hostage and say, now that I'm this big, I'm going to build my own thing and you guys have to convince me not to, or hold it over their head. It's not the way that I do business because I'm a Christian. If I wasn't a Christian, that would have been the smartest move. Build up my brand, separate from them, monetize, pull their audience over to where I am. Mm-hmm. That would have been a very big breach of trust because they put me in this position where they're trusting me. So when you asked if I have regrets about putting my eggs in that basket, I would if I did not have a conscience. But I'm going to treat them the way that I would want one of my employees to treat me. Mm-hmm. So the only reason I had such a big basket full of all these eggs, a big reason was because of the platform that I had. And I'm representing them.
But even so, I think we have a little bit two different mindsets, right? I am hardcore entrepreneur, like quit your job as quickly as possible and be free. That's my mindset, right? I think you're more like slow and steady and kind of like when the time's right type of person.
Okay.
So even when you said the platform that they gave you, and this might ruin my relationship with Biggerpockets, so I feel like you built that platform. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like they gave you anything. I think maybe they gave you an opportunity, but then you took it and ran with it and then built the biggest real estate podcast in the world.
I mean, that's a chicken or the egg argument, because when I jumped in with Brandon, it was probably the biggest real estate podcast there was. So I think Brandon had more to do with building it than I did.
When did you jump in?
Maybe 7 years ago.
Okay.
So they were number one. However, Brandon and I turned it into a next level
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
And then as more people came into the podcast space, I did help maintain the lead over everybody for a very long time. And that company 10, 20, 30x'd under me helping maintain their brand. Okay.
Yeah.
So you are right when you say it. There's also an element of, it's not like it was a startup when I jumped in. They were the big dog in town, and they were really the only dog in town. With hindsight, I could say I held on longer than I needed to. I could have made a jump 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Probably would have made more sense for me. It's just the value system that I operate by is like, if I work for you and I give you my word, I'm going to give you everything that I have, and I'm not just going to give up when things get tough.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, so I just made a video. It was like Secrets to a Millionaire. And one of the first things that I said was, usually, how did I say it? It was like, the level of success someone reaches is directly correlated with the amount of risk they're willing to take.
Sure.
So I'm the type of person where I would have started with them and then been like, all right, I got to go do my own thing, because I am in my head, I don't want to work for anyone else, like never. I want to have control. I want to reap the benefits, and I want to lose or fail on my own terms. Like, I'm okay with failing. If it was me, like, I could take that. But if we're failing because someone else is making decisions and I just have to do what they're telling me, I can't live with that.
They made it clear when I signed on with them, part of the deal was I couldn't go start my own thing, that I was going to be representing their brand, or I wasn't going to be allowed to be in the podcast.
Oh, okay, got it.
So that would have been a violation of the word I gave them.
Yeah.
Now, I could have went back and said, hey, I'm going to go start my own thing.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't like it, tough. This
Yeah.
is what's going to happen. It didn't sit right with me to do that. Now, that also is part of the pain that comes from when they say, hey, we're breaking up with you for whatever reason. I'm like, well, I was faithful this entire time. I was expecting that we were going to continue to grow our brands together.
Yeah.
So I think that's where some of that hurt can come from, is like, well, I kept up my side of the bargain here.
Yeah.
However, I don't know any successful people, like you said, that are not escaping some kind of pain in their life.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, everyone that's like really good at what they do,
Yeah.
they didn't have comfortable lives.
Oh, for sure.
And so I have learned with some wisdom to be grateful for the pain that God brings into your life.
Yeah.
Because it is very motivating. I was a psychology major, and one of the things you learn about is positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. People think negative reinforcement means I'm going to punish you if you do what I don't like. It's not what it means.
Yeah.
Positive reinforcement is the introduction of a stimulus that you enjoy to get you to do something. So if you do, if this rat pushes the lever I want him to push, I'll give it a pellet to eat. That's positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Negative reinforcement is the removal of adverse stimulus if you do the thing that's wanted. So the rat's being shocked, and it can stop the shock if it pushes the lever.
Yeah.
Negative reinforcement is way more powerful than positive reinforcement.
Oh, for sure.
If you're out in the cold and the rain and someone says, well, do 10 jumping jacks, I'll let you inside, you're way more likely to do it than if you want a pizza roll and mom says, do 10 jumping jacks. Like, I don't need it that bad, right?
Yeah.
Pain is needed for negative reinforcement to be powerful. So now in starting my own show and wanting to get to the top of the podcast space and this kind of new evolution of what's going to happen, the hurt that comes from that is actually a valuable asset that I maybe need in order to have the motivation to go do it.
Oh, for sure. For sure. What do you think as far as like when you left Biggerpockets, how many downloads do you think they were getting a month?
They didn't tell us, but
okay.
I don't think it was what it was in the beginning. Now, part of that, this is just me speculating right now. I think when Brandon and I were doing the show, it was one show a week. When Brandon left, I'm sure Biggerpockets did not like the thought of me doing the same thing to them that Brandon did. Okay. So part of the marching orders were start more podcasts so that David is not the only, like, they didn't want just Mickey Mouse at Disneyland. They want Donald Duck. They want Minnie Mouse. They want Goofy.
Which is smart.
It's smart. The problem is to find a Mickey Mouse is harder than you think.
A Mickey Mouse?
Yeah, to find an
100%.
A player is incredibly hard, right?
For sure.
So they start like 6 new podcasts And then they start putting out several shows a week of these podcasts.
Yeah.
And it waters down the audience. You're pulling people away from the main show to follow all of these other shows.
Yeah.
And you're making more content. It's hard to come up with good content all the time.
Yeah. Or people get confused and they're like, I don't know who these
That's
people
exactly right. Who's
Yeah.
Tony versus Ashley versus
Yeah.
David versus Henry versus Rob versus
Yeah.
Mindy versus Scott? They're all of them, right? Now, I think that they pulled that off because this was like the best market for real estate investing that anyone has ever seen.
Yeah.
It was everybody was doing good. We printed a bunch of money. Rates were at an all-time low. That money had to find somewhere to go. It goes into real estate. So everyone wants to be an investor. That was the perfect environment to do it. And I'm not even criticizing their decision. It worked very good, and it was a smart business move. The downside was it bled what was our show and the listeners and the views that it got, and it spread them over all the other shows.
Yeah.
So at the time that they made the switch, I would not be surprised if it was motivated by we're not getting the downloads that we should be getting. I don't know that that's because I wasn't doing a good job as the host as much as they've watered it down by going too big too fast.
Yeah. And also, again, Biggerpockets, don't get mad at me, but I think if downloads were going down, is because the real estate market is not where it was in 2020, 2022, whenever Biggerpockets potentially sold. I don't know when they sold, but we all went through this, right? And now, guess what? Real estate's hard. It's very hard, and you could lose a lot of money. So when everyone's making money, when the guy that wants to do a side hustle can just go make $50K just with appreciation by buying a bad deal, yeah, tons of people are coming in. And then when a bunch of people went bankrupt, because I've seen it, I took a whole bunch of losses, and I have a bunch of friends that went bankrupt after they raised interest rates, like flippers and multifamily guys and people buying rentals. They went bankrupt. People are scared and they're turned away. It's not sexy right now. So that could be another reason why.
It's a huge thing.
I don't think it was you. I don't know about the show. I definitely think the show thing, because I used to watch Biggerpockets myself, and I remember starting to see like, oh, there's this person and that person and this, and I'm like, I don't even understand. Like, there's like this money show, there's like this other show. I don't know. I know Tony from the Rookie Show. The Rookie Show to me made sense because it's like, all right, it's like strictly for beginners. And again, nothing against Biggerpockets, but I don't think that you did anything wrong that affected the company.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
At the same time that they put out more podcasts and more shows, you also had what I think, if you asked the young generation, what's your ideal job? The number one job they'd say is internet influencer. Everybody wants to be famous online, because it's easier to make money, and you get all these perks like significance and fame in a space, and you get to feel important. It's like, it's addicting when you become an online personality as opposed to just being a plumber who no one pays attention to what you're doing. And God sees, but he may be the only one that day. Right. So at the same time that BP launched all these podcasts, everyone else is doing the same thing. YouTube is exploding. Everybody wants a podcast. It used to be writing a book was a big deal. No, it's not. Anyone can write a book today.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone can have a podcast. There's guys with 11 downloads, and half of it is their aunts and their cousins telling girls at a bar that they have their own podcast to pick up a girl. It's not hard. So there's crazy competition for those eyeballs. At the same time, like you said, real estate is now hard. Finding cash flow is incredibly hard, which is what most people get into the space to try to do. And the number one resource out there, which is Biggerpockets, is like got several different podcasts, and it might be a little confusing. I do think that there is much less audience and way more people fighting.
For sure. Way less audience, for sure. I agree with, because even like we have an education company, right? We got affected. Anyone that's in the education space and real estate has seen a drastic change in the market. So I would imagine anyone that has podcast views, my views are going up on the podcast because I'm putting out way more, but like my Instagram, all that stuff, the views are down, and I believe it's because real estate isn't sexy. But even though real estate is not sexy, I still believe that it's the best way to build wealth. Better than stocks, better than crypto, better than anything else. That's my opinion and philosophy. I think, like, someone asked me one time, I was speaking at an event, and someone's like, what's your exit strategy for getting out of real estate? I was like, dude, my exit strategy is on my deathbed. when I die, that's when I'm going to get out of real estate. But I'm going to be in this game until it's over.
Do you know anyone that bought real estate 30 years ago that regrets that they bought it?
No. So that's why you got to buy. And that's why, even though it's hard right now, if you could figure it out, you're going to get the appreciation. You're going to get the principal pay down. You're going to get the little cash flow. You're going to get all the benefits and reap them 10 to 20 years from now, because that's when it really amplifies real estate investing.
Yeah.
So anything else about Biggerpockets before we get to real estate?
Just, I want to clarify that I did get replaced as the host, but that doesn't mean that I'm against Biggerpockets, that I'm against the company's philosophy, that there's any bad blood between us. Like, anytime you get hurt by something or you feel pain, you're not going to feel good about it. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily did anything unethical. I don't want people that like Biggerpockets to say, I don't like Biggerpockets anymore.
Yeah.
But when you're choosing who you're going to consume your content by, I don't think it's ever been more important than now to choose wisely.
Yes.
When you're picking the influencer, because everybody who does this, me included, has a motive for why we do it.
Yes.
Not everybody is honest about what their motive really is.
For sure. So let's talk about that. So I'll say my motives. Number one, I want to make money, period. Right? This podcast is not free, right? We have a staff member here. These cameras ain't free. This light ain't free. This building ain't free.
You've got video editing that has to be done. You have thumbnail creation that has to be done.
It's expensive to have a good podcast.
Yes.
It's not free. So number one, I need to make money. If this didn't make money, I don't know if I would do it. I think I would do it, but like on a lighter version. Number two, I do think that people should, philosophy-wise, I do believe people should flip and wholesale and replace their 9-to-5, because that's what I did. I have felt the benefits of becoming financially free, where I don't have to work for the rest of my life, but right now I have enough money. I don't need to worry about like what this costs, what that costs. I could take the day off. My mom has cancer. Boom, I'm paying her stuff. This person has this. Boom, I'm paying their stuff. That type of freedom I want people to have. That's why on this podcast, I give everything out. There's no paywall. There's no like, but Brian, what lender do you use? If they watch the videos and podcasts, we give everything out. If they want help with execution, that's where we could help them. So money, helping people, and then spreading the word about Jesus Christ. So on this podcast, at the end, I usually talk about the guest's faith and how faith has played a role in their life. So those are kind of my three. What are your reasons?
Everybody has an emotional reason and a practical reason.
Okay.
Right? The practical reasons are related to the money you said. They're to fuel the businesses that I have.
Yeah.
I want people to do loans with my mortgage company. I want people to buy houses with my real estate team. And that's going to be growing in the future. I need to build credibility with my audience so they go, I'm going to trust David and his people.
Yep.
That's the number one reason that I do it, for a practical purpose. Then you have the emotional reasons. It's fun to be able to, like you said, share your faith about Jesus Christ. It can be a fun outlet to express your personality a little bit. I get irritated when I hear people giving advice I think is bad. And so it just feels good for me to be able to give advice I think is good, instead of being irritated at what was bad. A lot of influencers will share their emotional reasons. Like, I just want to give back. I just want to help. I just want to be useful. I want to bring value. They'll give you these generic answers. That doesn't mean there's not a practical reason. They're selling a course. They're selling a book. They're doing something to make money. They're maybe even getting monetized from YouTube itself for these videos that come in, right? And then maybe their emotional reasons are not as honest as they're saying. They're telling you that they just want to help, but what they really love is a platform where they're important.
Exactly.
It feels good. One of the 6 human needs we all have is significance, and having a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever makes you feel significant. It gives you this platform that feels good. I don't shade anybody for liking the attention that they get. I'll shade them if they don't tell you that that's a part of what motivates them. And so when you're listening to people, you have to understand, if they don't have an honorable way of monetizing this, then they have to have dishonorable intentions. Because the work that goes into it, the money that they're spending on editing and everything that you said, they're motivated by something. They're just not telling you what it is.
I think Do you feel like you talked about your faith on the Biggerpockets platform?
No, because out of respect for Biggerpockets, they're not a Christian organization.
And this is a hot topic.
Yeah, and I can't shade them for that, right? Like, here's just as a Christian.
Well, I'm talking about shading you. Like, why didn't you? Don't you feel like you should have spread the gospel more?
No. I will spread the gospel on my platform because it's mine.
Yeah.
But Jesus said, give to God what is God's and give to Caesar what is Caesar's. In that realm, their audience is not Christian. This is not a Christian podcast. Their audience has said, we don't want to hear this. And so as a business that is being run, they have all the authority in the world and all the right to tell me we don't want this to get talked about.
Yeah.
For me to disobey that and just say, well, I'm going to do it anyways because Jesus trumps whatever these rules are.
Yeah.
I feel like I would have been judged by him negatively for that because I'm not representing him by talking about things where you've been told, hey, this isn't something our audience wants to hear.
Oh, okay. My audience, honestly, I've posted straight Christian videos and they flop hard. But then when I sprinkle it in, people are like in the comments, like, I love that you talked about this. I love your boldness. I love that. But I'm actually considering to start another podcast where I just talk about Christianity and entrepreneurship.
That might be wiser because the people that are listening to a podcast and want to learn how to build wealth are not coming to hear about Jesus. And if you're shoving it down their throat, but you can't make a person eat that's not hungry. That's like, true. What do you feel about the street preacher that's out there yelling at everyone, telling them they're going to go to hell?
I believe that there's a place for it.
So you think that there's like that is an effective way? Maybe Westboro Minister Baptist Church people, like they're yelling at people, you're gay, you're going to burn in hell, you're going to fry, that type of thing.
So philosophy wise, I believe that there's two things, right? So if you actually read the Bible, not you, but the listener, Jesus talks about hell.
Okay.
And I read about it today in our Bible study. He talked about, getting thrown into hell and,
Who did he talk about it to?
I believe it was the disciples. We were in like Matthew between 8 and 13 we read.
In fact, in all of the New Testament, I can't think of one time that Jesus went and shared the gospel or his teachings or anything with someone who didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
They came to him. He told them the truth.
Yeah.
And that offended a lot of people, which is what ultimately made people hate him. And then they're going to hate us in the same way because no servant's greater. However, I am mindful of the fact that Jesus didn't chase people down that didn't want to hear this and shove it down their throat. He lived his life in a way like the miracles, the healings, the love, the service that made people want to know more.
Yeah.
That's my issue with the person on the street yelling at people that aren't asking for this.
But I do. Okay, so here's my side, right? So I believe we have to share the gospel. We got to share the good news. We got to say, hey, there's a way to get life, and that's through Jesus Christ. If you don't, there is repercussions for it. I believe both are true. I don't believe in just the good news. Everything's great. All these people.
You're not a Joel Osteen. Just pretend like everything's good.
Yeah. And I also feel like it's a disservice to people when I'm like, oh yeah, like you're Christian, like it's cool. So there was a guy, right? I had him on this podcast. It was so funny. I was like, hey dude, are you Christian? Because he made some sort of remark about something. I was like, hey, are you Christian? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, that was a weird way to say it. I was like, so, like, do you believe in Jesus, that he died on the cross and he rose in 3 days? No, not really. So I was like, okay, you're not Christian. And he's like, yeah, no, I am Christian. I believe in God. I'm like spiritual.
Yeah, he probably agrees with Christian values.
Yeah, Christian values, but that's not Christianity. And I believe I have to let him know that that's not good enough. Just being a good person and living your life is not good enough.
I'd agree with you on that.
Yeah.
But that's a guy who wants to have that talk or is open to it.
Yeah, but I don't know if he wanted to have that talk. I just let him know, like, hey.
If he's bringing up Christianity, he's willing to talk. Let me put it another way. If I went to a restaurant and someone who that was Muslim and really believed that he was right came and said, hey, you're eating at my restaurant, and now you're going to have to let me listen to all the reasons that Islam is right and Christianity is wrong or whatever for 20 minutes, whether you want to or not, I wouldn't appreciate it. I'd be like,
you have the choice to leave.
Yeah, but if I've already sat down and I've paid for my food and I'm in his realm, and now he's making me listen to something that I wouldn't like, I would leave. or I would be irritated by it, right?
Yeah.
I don't want somebody to push something down my throat that I'm not interested in hearing.
Yeah.
And I think Christians have caused some damage making people listen to the gospel or telling them why they're wrong when the person wasn't asking in the first place.
Yeah.
Contrast that with, I'm going to wash your feet.
Yeah.
When you slap me in the cheek, I'm going to turn the other cheek to you also.
Yeah.
I'm going to meet your needs. I'm going to feed the orphans and the widows. It's going to cost me something.
Yeah.
And that is probably going to create a hunger in you that makes you say, well, what is this?
Yeah.
Now I've earned the right to have a conversation
Yeah.
that the street preacher hasn't. That's what I don't like, is when they just want to scream what they believe at people that don't care, but they didn't pay the price to earn the right to share that information with someone in the first place.
Yeah.
The conversation you talked about, you've already earned the right with that guy because
Yeah.
he's sitting down, he's interested in you, and he wants to have the talk.
Yeah. 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 And like I said, do I think that's the most effective? No. Do I think some small percentage of people will hear that and be like, dang, I'm scared. Let me look into it. I had a guy on here, another guest, where I asked about how he got saved. He said he looked up a video called 12 Minutes of Hell, and it scared him so
a guy wrote that book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a guy that had a dream where basically he thought he had died and went to, his name was Dan something, I want to say.
I've never looked it up, but he said he watched that video and immediately got saved and became this big Christian from that. So
I'm not against
1%,
Brian. I'm not against sharing the gospel. Of course we should do that. On the David Greene show, on the Brian Davila show, we can share it.
Amen, brother.
On a couple of my shows, I've already talked about God.
I know, I seen you talk about it, and that's why I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this was in there, but it wasn't on the Biggerpockets show.
That's because it's not my show.
And I respect that.
It would have been disrespectful to that company to try to sneak in these things that they don't want, that are not serving their audience, that the owner of that business didn't want being talked about.
Okay, that makes
sense. So it wasn't
sense.
about being ashamed of the gospel. It was more, I want to make sure I'm representing Jesus as well as I can.
Yeah. Do you mind talking about some of the hardships you've been going through?
No, I haven't talked about it much, and I'm going to share more on my podcast, but we could get into that if you want to.
Yeah. So, for sure, like in the link of this video, we're going to put your podcast. So if people want, you should go subscribe to this podcast for sure. But, and subscribe while you're here, guys. Like, why not? But, so what are some of the hardships that you're going through?
I'll give you the overview. There's going to be more I forget. It's been 2 years of hell.
Yeah. 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 years and counting. A little over 2 years ago, somebody figured out that the state of Florida had a glitch in their website that manages legal entities, like when you register your LLC. And that website allowed people to edit other people's documents. Now, you could not delete information from one, but you could add yourself to these companies as a manager, as a president, as a secretary, and it would let you do that. Mm-hmm. This guy figured that out, found out the names of 2 of my LLCs, added himself as a manager to the legal documents, paid a notary to say that I signed over the title from all the properties in these 2 LLCs. It was around 40 properties or so, from my LLC to his. Mm-hmm. Took title of them, which he did it illegally, but it is a legal document that says he owns them now. Registered them with the county as his, and started selling them to other people at real estate meetups as a wholesaler.
What the hell?
Yeah. Got away with it.
Have you talked about this before?
Not a lot, because I didn't want people to go do it again. Like, we got a big target on our back when you're in this scary influencer position. Yeah.
Is that just a Florida thing?
It was just a Florida thing from what I know of. And it wasn't that you could go to the county assessor's office and do this. It's because they were owned in an LLC, which is what everyone gets told is the safest way to own your properties.
Yeah,
now,
that's scary.
These were almost paid off. Like, the whole portfolio was almost paid off. So you think that's safer. A lot of people will tell you pay off your properties. Don't have debt. What made these an appealing target was there was no liens on most of these properties. So they were owned like in cash. He could go sell it to someone else, and title didn't have to pay off a lien.
Well, that's scary.
It was terrible. So I find out he's doing it. I go to the police, and they're like, we don't know what to do here because he owns title of these properties. It starts about a year-long process of the detective's office or the sheriff's office, detective's division, trying to investigate what is going on and how do we get this guy. He's going to the property manager and saying, give me the rent checks, not David. I own the properties. The property manager is like, I don't know who owns these things. I'm just holding the money in trust. I'm not paying anybody.
Oh, so you're not getting paid from them
for a year.
Damn.
Then he
you
goes,
have to pay the mortgage?
Yeah. Yeah. Then he goes to the tenants and he's like, pay me your mortgages, not the property manager. I own these. I mean, you can't sue the guy. He doesn't have anything now. He went to jail.
Oh, he's in jail.
Yeah. He eventually got caught.
Oh, okay.
But during this period of time, the tenants all move out of my houses because he's showing up with goons with guns, telling these people to pay me the rent instead of the property management company.
Wow.
The cops get called. He shows them legal documents saying that he owns the properties.
And, okay, another reason, guys, like, not to cut you off, but it's serious, but it's kind of a joke. There's another reason why people should show love and like and subscribe and share with Host Good News, because we actually, like, there's some consequences to putting yourself out there.
Oh, yeah.
So there's been people that, I'm not going to give them any clout at all, but have hit me up and done different things because they're like, oh, I see you're on this, you know, whatever. I'm not even going to talk about it, but that is a part of, like, putting yourself out there.
Yeah. And it's scary. Yeah. This wouldn't have happened to someone else. This happened because this guy heard me talking on the podcast, knew that I owned there, did a little bit of research to figure out what my LLCs were, and was able to take them all.
That sucks.
So I get the whole portfolio back after a year when a judge issues a judgment. Half of them are being used as trap houses.
Okay.
They've stolen all my air conditioning units. They've stolen all the copper.
Oh, my God. Are
prostitution
you serious?
rings and drugs are being sold out of these things. So I get the houses back, and no one's going to pay you for any of that.
Yeah. You're going to have to sell them below market value.
Yeah. And the state said, we can't guarantee he's not going to do this again, or that his cellmate's not going to go do this again. Because they said it's on the docket to be voted on in 2022 or 2023 to see if we can change this glitch.
There's no insurance, title insurance, or
title insurance protects the person buying the property. It's not going to protect the seller or the owner.
There's no insurance you can get, like LLC insurance. I don't know.
I've never heard of it. No one that I've talked to has heard of it. So I'm like, well, he could do it again. Like, someone else could come in and they could do this again.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just sold the whole portfolio to another investor in like one fell swoop. It was like, I don't want to go through another bunch of hell. Like, I just hired 2 people to help manage my portfolio. Both of them quit for being overworked and stressed out trying to deal with this whole thing. It was a huge mess. So I sell the properties. Now I have to get into a 1031.
Yeah.
No one told me that there's a specific rule on 1031s that I've never heard anyone talk about. I'm a podcast person. I hear about 1031s all the time. I didn't know that when you identify the properties in the first 45 days, you can only identify 200 times as much real estate as you sold. So if you sell $1 million worth of real estate, on the list that you're identifying the new properties, you can only identify $2 million worth of real estate. Now, normally, if you're selling $1 million of real estate, you probably only have $300,000 to reinvest.
Yeah.
So $2 million of real estate is plenty when you only have to reinvest $300,000.
Yeah.
In my case, my portfolio was almost paid off completely.
Okay.
So I submit my list on day 44, and then the 1031 company goes, oh, no, you can't have this many properties on there. You can only identify this much. I was like, well, that's like impossible. I would have to close on every single one of those specific properties. They're like, yeah. It's like, nobody ever mentioned that. So I go from having 6 different cities with 10, 15 properties on by the way, this is when interest rates just started to go up.
Yeah.
So all the talk was we're about to head into a recession. This is not a time you want to go buy a bunch of real estate.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I've got 180 days to close after they're identified. Let's see which markets soften the most and which properties I can get at the best price, and those are the ones I'm going to go. So I identified as many as I could, and I'm going to keep an eye on these houses. You can't identify starter homes because someone's going to buy those that week.
Yeah.
So you got to only identify more expensive houses that have a higher day on market to even have a chance of closing during the 1031.
Yeah.
Then I find out I have 1 day to submit a new list of every property that needs to be identified, or I'm going to owe like $2 million of taxes.
Yeah.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So my whole plan has to get scrapped out, and I have a 24-hour period to decide which houses I'm going to buy. Now, the next thing I realized was if it's going to be identified, it has to be in contract, because if I identify a house and I can't put it in contract, it's not going to qualify for the 1031.
Yeah.
So I have to go and put as many houses as I can in contract in 1 day. It's like a crazy movie where like you got $1 million you got to spend in 1 day, and if you don't get any of it.
It's like a Mr. Beast show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nuts, right?
Yeah.
So I had all these different markets in place, and I'm like, well, I don't have the time to do the research on every house that I want. So I throw everything away, and I figure the Smoky Mountains probably has the lowest ceiling of big wins, but it does have the lowest floor. I probably can't screw up a ton investing in the Smoky Mountains because there's always going to be people that need a cabin to rent.
That's what you thought.
Yes. So but it was like, what else am I going to do? You're going to invest in Scottsdale. You got all these short-term rental markets. And how am I going to go buy regular rentals in one day? Enough to spend all that money. So long story short, I go through a crazy day of putting properties in contract, learning as much about the Smoky Mountains as I could, trying to find the best deals that I can, counters, counter offers, back and forth, all kinds of stuff. I'm using an agent that's recommended to me by a business partner who says this is like the best guy, the best property manager I've ever come across. Got to trust the dude. The guy makes about $250,000 over a 45-day period in commissions from all these houses that I buy all these cabins. Then that person turns out to be an absolute crook. Runs a huge property management company out there and is doing a terrible job managing these properties. So I find out they're not putting them on VRBO or Airbnb. And when they do, they're using the listing pictures from the MLS that I picked the ugliest houses I could find to get the best deal. Some of the pictures are uploaded sideways. They're like cell phone pictures taken by some backwoods Tennessee realtor. That's what they're putting on Airbnb and VRBO because they're getting them rented out via their direct booking website. Why do you think they want to use direct booking instead of Airbnb?
To take money?
Well, they get to take more money, and there's no transparency when they do a bad job with the management. There's nowhere for the guests to leave a bad review. So I make them put them on VRBO and Airbnb, and then I find out like a year into this that these pictures are so bad. So I make them get new pictures taken, which I have to pay for. Then they put them up, and we get bookings from those sites, and you're getting 2 stars, 1 star.
Why didn't you fire them?
Because I eventually, after working with them as much as I could, I said, I cannot do this anymore. These are bleeding money every month. I'm taking them back. They hit me with a lawsuit for breach of contract.
Oh, you signed a contract in the beginning?
Yeah. Supposed to be for a year. One of the employees on my team signed it. I had negotiated the commission down from like 35% to 20% because I gave them $15 million worth of cabins or whatever at one time. They added a clause in there that said, if we agree to this, you are now also going to have to pay $500 per month per cabin, $300 per month per cabin, depending on the size. And you're signing up for 3 years instead of 1. And one of my staff members signed that, not paying attention to the newer contract. So I had told him, adjust it and I'll sign it for a year. And the staff member signed it with a 3-year contract in there, which I didn't know was the case. You would think if you had done that poorly of a job for any of your clients, especially one with a reputation, that you'd be bending over backwards to try to fix it. Opposite with them. They hit me with a lawsuit. And are threatening to sue me for breaching contract after all this. Now,
sue them.
The story gets even better. One of their employees, or an anonymous person who claims to be an employee, messages me and says, hey, I feel bad and you need to know this. They're charging you extra money for your maintenance, and they're keeping some off the top. So they're not paying all the money they charge you to the people that do the work. They send people to do maintenance on your cabins all the time that doesn't need it.
Oh my gosh.
They are letting their friends and family stay in your cabins without telling you and without you getting paid for it. And they run their company horribly, and that's why your cabins are doing so bad.
Of course.
And that person quit because they were afraid of this family that's managing it, and is like, you need to know about this, but I can't tell you who I am because I'm scared.
Why don't you sue them?
I am in the process of it. I don't know that they have any money though.
Bro, I am a savage. Just so you know.
Are you a lawyer?
No, I'm just a savage, bro. Like, ask Ryan. Ryan's a savage too. We don't play when someone tries to screw us over. Like, we do not play. We'll burn the ships. We'll freaking cause
there's a lawsuit in place. Like,
that
we're putting together. It's incredibly expensive to do it, and then you don't know if they're going to have any money at the end of the day.
But I don't care. I'm coming after people.
But,
and I'm putting them on blast. Like, if I were you, I'd be like, hey, it's this person on this. I don't want you to do it on here.
No, that may end up being the case depending on how this lawsuit plays out.
But I would have done it. When did this start?
I mean, I bought the cabins in that 1031 over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, so like I had some Airbnbs in Joshua Tree, and I hired a property management company. And like within the first couple months, I saw that they were fumbling it. I was like, hey, peace, get out. Like, you're out. I got to get someone else in because I can't, like, I think you're really nice.
No.
I think you're really nice.
I am a bigger target that people can go after because they think I have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I am constantly having people stealing from me. I mean, we're like 2 stories in. There's like 12 of these. People that have been stealing money, people that from my companies that were really successful that stole clients and stole staff and went and started their own thing like I told you about. Yeah. It has been 2 years of nonstop.
Stealing necessarily, because when you were telling that story earlier about building people up and people leaving, I feel like that's a part of entrepreneurship. Like, people are going to build up.
If you're a POS, it is. If you're a good person, that's not a part of entrepreneurship.
That's where I'm saying we have a different mindset, because it's kind of like people are going to come and go.
No, like, I didn't. Good people won't do that. This person only was as big as they were.
Entrepreneurs, though.
Okay, I'm talking about a person who came to me at 21 years old. I built him into an incredibly good loan officer, personally introducing him to all of the realtors that he was doing business with, giving him this platform, hiring staff, training him, bringing him into the leadership team. And then someone came and poached and was like, hey, if you want to come over here, I'll give you all this stuff. And not only did he leave, but he tried to take all of our processors and other loan officers from the company. He was like, hey guys, let's mutiny and let's jump over here and do this thing.
That's bad. But someone just leaving.
No,
like,
people are going to leave.
Yeah.
I'm talking about left with my clients, with my staff, he's only able to do it because it would be like if you said, hey, David, I need a loan officer. I'm like, use this guy.
Yeah.
Right. And so all of the Wealthy Way customers are coming and using him because I gave him all those people.
Yeah.
Then he jumps and takes all that business with him.
Yeah.
If he wants to leave and start over from scratch and be like, hey, David, these are all the people that came to me from Brian.
Yeah.
Give them to another loan officer. Let's work something out. That's one thing. But this is like, oh, I don't need David anymore because he's connected me with all these people. That's just a lack of integrity.
Yeah. I get that part.
Someone leaving. Yeah. People are going to leave.
Yeah. But besides the Florida lawsuit and all this other crap, and then I'm sure Biggerpockets was like an emotional thing. Is there anything else that's, because I could
more than we could talk about.
Yeah, more than you can talk about.
It just keeps going.
Have you tried to give this all to the Lord?
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
You can't. There is not for people listening that would say, have you tried this? Have you tried that?
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
He's not coming in on a white horse to save me right now.
Yeah.
And you spend a lot of time trying to figure out, why are you not having my back? Why isn't this being fixed? And who knows? You don't know what his plans would be. Many people in the Bible, Joseph went through this, Daniel went through this, David went through this. David was crowned king and then got it taken away from him and had to go hide in the wilderness for forever. I'm sure he felt these emotions of like, why don't you have my back?
Yeah.
All the time, right? In that point of not understanding and being surrounded by enemies and having people stealing from you and ripping you off and the stress of all these lawsuits, and there's a whole lot more than this, it does change your relationship with money. It just does not, it is not as important as it felt when you were crushing it and you were doing really good and you were getting all this attention. I'd rather feel this today than on my deathbed saying, why did I care so much about the money, the success, whatever the case would be.
Yeah. Dang, that's crazy.
Usually you hear these stories when someone did something really stupid. They got addicted to cocaine. They slept with somebody else's wife. They gambled away their family's money. Usually there's like a thing that someone did that screwed it up. Wasn't the case with me. Like there was no point where I could be like, I really messed up with this. I mean, there was probably some wisdom I could have had with hindsight that I wish I would have done different. It also happened when I was crazy busy. We were selling 50 houses a month on the David Greene team. I'm trying to hire agents and keep houses in escrow and start a mortgage company. So you're not able to pay as much attention to all of this as you normally would. But it happened. And now I'm in this position of like, how do you distance yourself from the anxiety and the negative emotions that come from it and put your focus on the things you can control? Yeah.
How are you doing that?
I've been spending a lot of time researching, praying, thinking about the state of the value system of the country we're in right now. It's become much more interesting to me than just how do I make money in real estate? How do I get clicks? I think that like marriage is in a horrible position. I think dating is harder than it has ever been, and it's only getting worse.
Are you single?
I'm single.
Okay.
Yeah. If you look at our birth rate, if you look at how many people are getting married, it's like so low that the population's in decline. It's very bad right now.
So you're single?
I'm single.
Got it. Okay. How long have you been single?
Oh, well, this whole thing started right around the same time I stopped seeing the girl that I was seeing too.
So I've
About
also
2 years.
I've also been very interested in like Christian relationships because I feel like I know so many great Christian women and men that are single. And I'm like, how the hell are these people single? But the guy with the drug and alcohol problem, he can find a girl.
Yeah.
But we have a woman named Jocelyn at our office. If you're single, we're going to put the link of her social media in the beautiful woman, respect to my wife, you know, beautiful soul, so nice, so organized, has her own house, and she's single. And I'm like, how? And then on and on. Brianna, right here, great, beautiful person. She just got engaged. Show him your ring, Brianna. Look at that.
Very nice ring.
There you go. She just got engaged, but she was single for a while. And
Yeah.
I'm like, how? I don't understand.
See, because you're married, so you don't have to worry about it. There is a science to how this has happened. And long story short, I don't think it's coincidental. I think that there are nefarious spiritual actors at play, destroying the foundation of what makes people want to be married and destroying the value that men and women bring into marriage.
Sorry. You don't think you could just go to church and find a nice lady?
You can, but the expectations of what women are going to have of what she wants from a guy versus what guys are going to have of what they want for a wife have never been further apart.
That's the part that I'm so interested in with successful entrepreneur Christians, because I'm like, I would imagine if I was single again, my expectations are high. I'm not dealing with trauma and all this crap, but it seems like that's necessary to find a wife.
And what the wives are looking for from a husband.
Yeah.
You got to think, like, in just 20 years of time, it has gone from men provide and protect and women support them and take care of the kids in the house to women can do everything men can do. They are rewarded and glamorized for being independent and making their own money.
But I don't know if those are Christian women. Maybe they are. I shouldn't say that.
Again, it comes down to how you define Christian.
Yeah. But I think a true Christian, that's what I call true. You're going through the sanctification process. You understand that as a wife, you're supposed to submit to your husband. And as a husband, you're supposed to submit to your wife.
Yeah.
So
how much of that do you see out there, though? There's a lot of people going to churches, but they've got a mentality that isn't what Peter talks about in the Bible between how men and women are supposed to be.
Yeah.
So that when you ask, like, how are you getting through it? So much of my thoughts have been like, what is the devil doing to ruin our ability to create God's intended purpose in creation, which is men and women living as one being? Been ripped apart.
How strong on your faith, like on a scale of 1, you're almost not Christian, and 10, you're just on fire. Where are you at?
Logically, I'd say I'm a 10. Emotionally, that goes back and forth, if we're just being honest.
Okay.
Yeah, like you in your walk with God, you stumble, you have issues that you struggle with.
Yeah.
Like when you talk about this, and if you sound smart about it, it's easy for people to assume, oh, you're like on fire.
Exactly.
The fire comes and goes, though.
Yeah.
Like because of my own sin, because of doubt, because of whatever you have going on in your life. But what doesn't change is I know it's real. I know it's true.
Yeah.
I know God created men and women for a purpose, and we are happiest when we live in that purpose. But the world gets into all of us. Even those of us who are in the church have to live in this world, and it like seeps its way into our minds.
Yeah.
And so just like we were talking about the expectations people have, we always have to be fighting that battle in ourselves.
It's amazing. I'm sorry. I just have to say this again. It's amazing that Christian man, very successful, has influence. You have everything, but finding the right person is just hard.
Massively hard.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's massively hard. I mean, but there's so much content about this that's really good. It just never shares the Christian perspective. Like they get truths right. In the red pill space, there are very intelligent people that see and observe things. They don't understand that God created men a certain way and women a certain way, and we're happiest when we live in line with that creation.
Yeah.
And that American culture is shoving down people's throats to be literally the opposite of what will make you happiest living with God. Women are being constantly told, you got to be a boss babe, you got to be independent, you got to have your own thing, you can't trust any guys, you can't ever submit to a guy.
Yeah.
Men are constantly being told, you need to take a step back, you need to let women win, you need to stop being so controlling, you're a misogynist by nature, and so they're acting less and less masculine, it's creating a world where women are having a hard time finding a guy that they can admire and be attracted to.
Yeah.
And men are having a hard time finding a girl that wants to support them. And we're just missing. It feels like 2 to 5% of the population is pursuing what you were talking about.
It is. Because, like, again, just to emphasize the point, we had about 30 people that used to work at this office. We've cut down since then. I would say 90% of them were Christian. I would say 80% of them were single.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, you guys are in the same office. Like, and I'm your boss, and I'm telling you guys to commingle, and you won't even do it. I'm like, I don't understand. But
what people are looking
that was
for,
a joke, just in case an HR.
I think what people are looking for in dating, what they want versus what biologically we are wired to respond to has never been more different.
Yeah. And I also feel like and I can't speak to it, but as a married person looking at the single people, I'm like, you guys are looking for like this perfect person.
Yeah.
And I don't personally think that exists. Right. So when I married my wife, I was a broken person. I was like, drinking alcohol, doing drugs. I just started real estate. I had bad credit. I was just like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like 25. I'm still like partying. And then I grew into who I was.
Partly because she believed in you.
Partly because she believed in me. I don't know, but I just know that.
Don't you think it was a motivation to get your shit straight?
Oh, yes, for sure. For sure.
Men need a purpose. We need a reason.
Yes.
And your family is that women have no idea how much they motivate and affect how we think and what we go do.
Yep.
Right. So we've taken women out of the playbook for most men. Most men just can't get a girlfriend even if they want. And then you hear women that keep saying, why can't I find a real man? Why can't I find a real man? Most men don't become real men unless they have a woman to fight for.
Ooh, dang. I'll tell you a quick story. So I remember when I met my wife, right? I was just like, first of all, at the time, because now my self-esteem has went up, I was like, dude, this girl's way too good looking for me, right? So then we started getting together, and I was like, okay, this is great. And then one day we were just on a date, and she's like, what's your credit score? And at the time, my credit score was terrible because I was an idiot. I remember my bank would call me like, hey, like, you got to pay your bill. I'm like, I don't want to pay. Like, I was an idiot. My credit was destroyed. But when she said that, I was like, damn, I got to fix my credit. And that made me go out and fix my credit.
That's your motivation. She became that.
And then when we were things were getting more serious, I was like, I got to buy a house for us to live in.
Yep.
Like, I can't live
That's
at
how
our
God
parents'
wired
house.
men to work.
And that's what
She
happened.
was the catalyst that caused you to step up, right? Well, you today in the dating market would be a red flag.
Why? Because I'm successful and single?
No. The 25 you.
Yeah.
No girl's they're all being told to avoid guys like you. He has bad credit. He's struggling with something.
Yep.
He doesn't have his shit together.
Yep.
Girl, wait until he's here.
Yep.
And then, like, there's a saying that girls don't care about your struggle. They wait at the finish line and they pick the winner.
Dang.
And that is probably how women would prefer it, but we're wired by God to make these changes when we have a reason to, right? So when you look at like couples that used to get together when they were younger and she would help that guy become more mature and he would have to become mature to help her find the safety and security that she needed to become the best woman that she could be. And then you have kids. So now you have to get your stuff together because these little creatures are looking up to you and copying everything you do. Yeah. There's a natural structure that keeps your sin nature from getting too out of hand. But when you keep us away from apart for a long time and we're just growing single and set in our ways and what we're looking for, everybody has a list, Brian, 200 things long of what they want in a person.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, what are you doing to offer? Nothing. Nobody's sitting down saying, what do I need to become for the person I want to marry? It's like you got a bunch of sellers that are saying, I know my worth. I'm not accepting anything less than $2 million.
Yeah.
And a bunch of buyers that are saying, I know my worth. I'm not going to overpay for a property.
Exactly.
And so no transactions are happening.
Exactly. And I remember, very last thing, because we got to wrap up, but I remember when I was with my wife in the beginning, my broker, because I literally got my license, met my wife like 45 days later, and then I was like, I started becoming successful right away. And I remember I told my broker, I was like, dude, I have a girlfriend. Do you think I should have a girlfriend right now? Because I'm just starting. And he's like, no, you should be single. I was like, all right. So I broke up with my wife. And then, honestly, she came back chasing me. And I remember making a decision like, okay, like, she's not perfect. There's stuff that I just don't like about her. This is not the best time because I'm starting this, but I am willing to go for it, right? Mm-hmm. And it paid off, right? With, we have 3 beautiful children, probably gonna have more. We've bought in houses. We've had a fairly successful life so far. And was it perfect at the time? No. But I was just like, as a man, I had to make a commitment to her and forfeiting whatever it was going to cost. Very last thing also I've been struggling with is like, and the reason why I preach the gospel so much is because people don't know. And men hear, you need to be tough. You're higher value. Women need to submit to you. Men, I believe, they need to submit to their wives, which is hard, which is very hard, right? Even when you're right? And you need to lead your family and your kids to go to church. Mm-hmm. There's nothing more important than going to church on a Sunday morning, period. There's no business, there's no football game, but no one says that. You should take your ass to church excuse my language, you should take yourself to church every Sunday. You don't know it all. You haven't read the Bible. You don't know what's going on. Show up to church. Get your kids around other Christian kids. Get your wives around other Christian wives and live that life. I feel like everyone's like, oh, I don't go to church, but I'm spiritual. I listen to Andrew Tate. I listen to this guy. It's like, no, dude, you need to go to church, period. But
Andrew Tate's a good example of someone who has figured out some objective truths about men and women, which is why he's popular. He doesn't see it as the framework of we are supposed to use these truths to serve our spouse.
Yeah.
Instead of I use these truths to take a different girl home from the club every night. Or women doing the same thing. I use these truths to finesse a guy to get my meals paid for.
Yeah.
And to create a roster of guys that I'm just playing with their heads.
All right, we got to wrap up. Can we say a quick prayer to wrap this podcast up?
It was cool, man.
Okay. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day, Lord. Thank you for having David Greene here today, Lord. Please bless him, Lord, with the Holy Spirit. Please touch him spiritually so he knows you're real. Keep next to him through all these trials and tribulations that he's going through, Lord. Please help him find a partner if that's meant for him, Lord. Please bless all the listeners of this podcast. Bless them and their families and their businesses. Thank you for everything that we have, Lord. We appreciate you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. If you're still here, listen and subscribe to David Greene's podcast and subscribe to this one. Peace.